Disclaimer. I am a law student, and the legal information provided is not legal advice. For that, please hire an attorney. Russell's Teapot 42. You are on the stream. You are live.
Oh, okay.
Hello there.
I guess I gotta turn off the stream. I did not realize because I was still hearing about radical sandwich anarchy.
I know I was utterly destroyed in the debate. It was the first debate where I was completely and utterly annihilated. I am shook to my core.
Oh no.
I know.
Well,
it's unfortunate. I officially have an L on my belt. Unfortunate.
I have got, a topic I wanted to discuss that might be a bit of an easy layup for you, but so maybe that can, kind of move things forward.
All right, hit me. What do we got?
Okay. Well, so back in your debate with Mars, you said, and I pulled up the quote from the transcript, a transphobic action is any action which has a materially adverse effect on a trans person or group of trans people by virtue of the fact that they are transgender. And I wanted to kind of ask, first of all, is this like a general, like your idea of a general definition of transphobia that should be used by everyone?
I would say that's an objective definition of transphobia. Again, like people, like I understand that, like, and mind you, if you go into my research doc, I base this off of like the total, I have all the prevailing definitions of transphobia, right? Like I've looked at all of them, right? And the thing is, a lot of them look at intent, and like intent is cool to consider, but like there's really no point in arguing in intent because no matter how much we do, inductively, we can never know with 100% certainty what someone's intent is. So I see it as kind of like pointless to argue, right? So instead, I usually focus objectively on the actions that someone does and the things that people say, right? Because that way we're actually able to like come to like definitive conclusions. Like we're able to deductively reason whether or not someone does a transphobic thing. Now, mind you, that doesn't necessarily mean that they are like subjectively transphobic. It's just like a way to be able to like evaluate things in like a way where we could arrive at more definitive answers, right? That's why I use that, because
so this is like a political science maybe definition, like it's a way to tell which people and which topics and which ways of pursuing things are against like anti-trans. I think maybe is.
I would say it's like it's not. I mean, like, sure, like if you want to label it political science, I don't know. It's just like it goes with like the idea of like philosophically objective analysis, right? Like specifically like being able to establish criteria, to be able to, if like a certain thing that you are evaluating meets the criteria that you set out, then you can deductively conclude with absolute certainty that it is the thing that you are testing, right?
Okay.
Like that's the reason why.
Okay, so it's set up as a definition that you can put into a syllogism and determine in a fairly strict logical standard whether something is transphobic, which you can't do in the more colloquial definition, which is basically a sort of a rational repulsion of trans people, I think.
That's probably.
Would you agree that that's?
Yeah, I'd probably agree with that, right? Like, I don't want to. Now, mind you, if someone like acts on that repulsion and does something to materially and negatively harm a trans person by virtue of the fact that they are trans, I would call it a transphobic action. But like, I would call that action transphobic regardless of what the intent is behind it, right? It certainly could have been motivated by that disgust, but I don't really care whether or not that person was disgusted, because like if they can hide it really well, then we can never know with certainty, right? Someone could be disgusted by trans people and never fucking show it. The stream I was just on, like, I can't say anything with absolute certainty, but there are probably some righties on there who were fucking disgusted with me just by virtue of the fact that I was a trans person, right? I cannot guarantee that because I can never peer into their mind. But just based on the demographic and the fact that one of them was like a fucking Proud Boy, yeah, that would be an educated inductive guess, right? I would have to look more into their content. But that's why I look at someone's objective actions, right? Because people can fucking lie. There are plenty of like race realists who will argue up and down all day long that, you know, oh, we just want what's best for all races. We just want to acknowledge like the very real heavy quotations differences between black and white people. We just want our ethno state for everyone so that everyone can be, but like in their mind, like they're fucking racist, right?
Oh yeah, and I'm fully aware, and like I've been on personally kind of a political journey over the last 5 years, as I was in more of the kind of circles that those sorts of people came from, I
Oh
guess,
shit.
and
Well,
I've
I've
just
seen
sort
you.
of
Yeah, I've seen you in the Discord, so I mean, like, I don't know. You seem
yeah.
pretty decent. Yeah.
I'm one of the edgier regulars, but I'm kind of I feel like I'm the edgiest person that should be allowed in your Discord.
I mean, listen,
I
like, it's similar to Vosh, right? Like, I am the
Yep.
line. All right, there's no one edgy, and then like I'm pretty edgy, right? Like anyone who just saw me fucking debate
Mhm.
those people, like, yeah, like obviously I'm edgy, right? But I
Yep.
am the line. There's no edgier than I am. I like that
Mhm.
rule. I
Yep.
appreciate that rule. But yeah, yeah,
I
like it's
get it.
fine. It's fine.
But yeah, so I do have 2 points I wanted to discuss about, like, on that. So one of them is uh kind of the ethics for using a term that is as emotionally charged as transphobia in a different context. And the other is that breaking this down and outside of its connotation kind of pulls it away from the inherent badness of transphobia itself, because colloquially transphobia is bad, I would generally argue, because it's irrational. But this definition gets that away from that. It has nothing to do with what the person is thinking, or what they're like, where their transphobic actions come from. And so I feel like in this one, like, so what I would have to ask here is then, I'm going enough in this direction. Would a transphobic action be bad still if trans people were not marginalized?
Um.
Like, if trans people were somehow actually privileged, and I'm not by
Mhm.
any means claiming that they are, I know that they're obviously not, but if they were in some fantasy world, the privileged class, um, would transphobia not be as bad? Or like, what's the like logical construct for why transphobia should be opposed, other than that it's against the group that you're in?
Well, I don't think that we should negatively like treat people of any background based on like some intrinsic quality of that person, right? Like I think that it's not really a question of like whether, I mean, like obviously yeah, like trans people are marginalized, but just my immediate gleaning is that it's more about like disparagingly treating people based on an intrinsic quality of that group, right? Like they're like being trans is an intrinsic quality. It's not, for as much as people might want to argue it, it's not a choice, right? Like I am this
Mm-hmm.
way because this is the way that I am, right? Like I this is a quality of me that is not changeable, right? And I don't think that we should take any actions which negatively affect people by virtue of the fact that they belong to an intrinsic category, right?
Okay, so like there could be like a whole list of terms for and obviously there are for people of different sexualities, black people, even white people. I would assume you would apply that logic to as well.
I'm trying to think about how, because I mean, like that gets into the weird. I mean, like there probably is an analysis of power there, because but I'm trying
Hmm.
to think of like even an example now where I would negatively treat people who are, I guess like the only example I could possibly think of is affirmative action, where it's like, oh well, if you like, I know that this is like the more conservative argument, right? That by if you
Hmm.
give affirmative action to people of color, then you are superseding the rights of people who may not be black, to be able to otherwise, I guess, acquire abilities or prospects that they may have otherwise qualified for, right? That
Hmm.
might be the only exception, broadly speaking. So I think that where I'm coming down on this, right? Just thinking about it right now, is that you probably have like two tiers of like ideas, right? You first have an
Hmm.
idea where like at a baseline, no one should disparagingly treat other people by virtue of the fact that they belong to a certain category, right? Or
Okay.
that they belong to an intrinsic category, right? And then you get into this question of, like, for example, with something like affirmative action, by benefiting a disparaged group, a historically disparaged group on one hand, and possibly negatively affecting people who belong to the other group. First, I probably would
Hmm.
make the argument that it probably doesn't really negatively affect, like, for as much as people, like, I guess in this case, white people probably feel like, oh, I'm being negatively affected. For the most part, they're probably going to be fine. I understand that that's not like a very persuasive argument, but broadly speaking, they probably will. But beyond that, right, I guess I would make an argument, like the more philosophical argument is that there's probably like a superseding idea that like there are some instances where even if you have like a logically consistent violation of this kind of basic principle that we shouldn't negatively treat people by virtue of the fact that they belong to a category, sometimes we need to be able to recognize that because there has been a historic and repeated distreatment of people by virtue of the fact that they belong to a category, then it takes such a drastic remedy on a societal scale to be able to remedy that, right? And that remedy may cost other demographics or groups which have benefited off of the disparagement of the former group, right? So like in this case, like, yeah, affirmative action may possibly in some way harm people who are not people of color, but also like this is like recognizing that at a systemic level that historically people of color have been like so disparaged by our country and like things that we've done in our country that it takes a systemic solutions in order to be able to resolve them, right? I think that's basically the arguments.
I understand. So can I give you a hypothetical to kind of like test that idea? So let's imagine, and again, I'm going to pull it back to the fantasy world in which trans people, let's say that because of a religious ideology in this fantasy world, trans people are elevated to a position of like demigods. They're treated like
interesting.
And and there are people who had like intrinsic qualities in the past who have been treated with religious reverence because of those qualities for fairly arbitrary, superstitious reasons. So in this world, trans people have a bunch of special privileges that no one else has. They get to live in palaces, for instance, maybe, I don't know. And as this world like becomes more modernized and people start to question these power structures that this religious, society has, would the removal of the special, privileges that the trans demigods have been given be transphobic? And would that be bad? Even or like, does that fall into this definition? The removal of the privileges of a group who has been given privileges by the virtue of being in that group would technically materially adversely affect them, but by the virtue that they're in the group.
Let me think about this for a second. My intuition is probably it's fine. I mean, like for me, affirmative. So like, I guess I'm kind of analyzing this through the same lens of like affirmative action or like some action which does like help a historically marginalized group. I mean, like I see like affirmative action as what is a solution to the fact that like a group has been historically disparaged, right? So like assuming that you are able to use affirmative action to the point where eventually the group is no longer disparaged in the same way that they were before, whether it's because, like some combination of like culturally everyone is like fucking, I guess at this point, like fine with trans people, they aren't like negatively treated. And like most people who are trans are able to work, like be able to apply the same amount of effort and work and be able to, broadly speaking, achieve the same amount of success as other people who do not come from that group, then yeah, I think
maybe
it's probably
we get there someday.
Yeah. But I think at that point it's probably fine because at that point there's really like it's not solving anything, right? Like the problem is gone. But only like when the problem is gone, or the problems like underlying like why trans people are like systemically disparaged, would I say that it's fine. But yeah, like once the problem is solved, then we're good.
Okay, so kind of like trying to analyze where this comes from then, would you say that this basis, this way of analyzing the mistreatment of groups is based on kind of an axiomatic acceptance of egalitarianism, essentially, that that no one should have special privileges or disadvantages by their existence in a group, and that this is a way of analyzing whether something is causing special disadvantages to bring them below some kind of equal level, but if someone has been risen above that equal level on a pedestal to remove that pedestal and bring them back to the standard would be acceptable. Does that sound like what the basis behind this is?
I mean, yeah, kind of. Like the idea is that I want to live in a meritocracy, like a genuine meritocracy, right? Like I want to make sure that anyone is like, again, like I'm not arguing for, because I know that some people will like misquote me or misquote, like will strawman this and say like I'm arguing for like equality of outcome, and I'm not arguing for equality of outcome, right? I do want people to be able to come from, like I do want people to be able to believe that if they apply more work and more effort than other people, then they are able to achieve more in society, right? I believe that's a fundamental principle that I would adhere to, right? Like the difference, like for me, I just want to make sure that you have two people who come from two different circumstances, and that by virtue of one of them having like some intrinsic quality, like being like a sexuality or a gender or racial minority or so on, that they do not have to work harder than other people who do not come from that categories in order to achieve the same degree of success, right? That's usually like my basic metric, right? I want to be able to live in a society where anyone is able to come from any background fundamentally and be able to apply the same amount of effort and achieve the same kind of results, right?
Right. And that's, that's what I meant by egalitarianism. Rawls is veil of ignorance, where you should imagine the society that you want to live in without the pre-knowledge of where you're going to end up in that society, whether you're going to be, white, black, trans, disabled, cis, etc. So if you could end up being in any of these categories, how would you want society to work?
Right. Anyway, I have other people waiting, so I think I've kind of arrived at the logical conclusion. Do you have any final memes?
I basically just wanted to say that I'm, excited to get the chance to talk to you, and I've been excited about you for months, ever since I saw the "What is an Argument" video, and I'm really glad. Yeah, I've been really glad to be along for you on this rise to the top that you've been, because I started in when you were like at 3K.
Oh, damn. All right, you've been around for a bit. Damn. Or I mean, like I say a bit. It's like most of this growth has been over the summer. It's been a crazy summer.
Yep.
But thank you.
I'm pretty sure I'm also the one who threw the Ryan Barnes links at you.
Oh shit, really? Oh damn. Well, thank you for getting that ball rolling. That's definitely turned into a massive conversation. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right.
Well, I'm so glad to have talked to you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Talk to you later.
Trans
Bye.
rights.
Hey, thank you.